Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria is official for February. Now, this fight was originally supposed to take place in January, but after Volk got knocked out by Islam, and it was a pretty brutal knockout, they decided to move it back a month, but I don't know if that's enough time still. We have seen many times guys get knocked out and they come back too soon and they're just not the same. But also on the flip side, he could come back and be perfectly okay. That happens all the time as well, but at his age, it's a little worrying. And he is facing the young, up-and-coming Ilia Topuria, who is undefeated and has quite a few advantages going into this fight. For one, he is the much younger fighter at 26, whereas Volk is 35. Now, that age can be a good thing and a bad thing. It's good because he's going to be the more fresh fighter, but it's also a bad thing because he's less experienced. He hasn't fought Max Holloway 3 times, Yair Rodriguez, Brian Ortega. He also has the momentum carrying into this fight as he's undefeated and just beat guys like Josh Emmett and Bryce Mitchell, whereas Volk just got knocked out by Islam. What makes this fight so interesting is that Volk is facing a guy who is extremely well-rounded and is dangerous no matter where this fight goes. He can knock you out on the feet, he has insane power in his hands, and he can submit you on the ground. He's one of the best boxers in the UFC. He has very good quick combinations. He's fast, he can knock you out with one punch, and on the ground his grappling is elite. He's got great submissions. He submitted Bryce Mitchell. He can transition well between different positions. He has great ground and pound. Not a lot of guys in the featherweight division use ground and pound, and neither do a lot of Volk's past opponents. Most of the wrestlers and grapplers he's faced, like Islam and Brian Ortega, don't really use ground and pound to the level that Ilia does. And if Ilia is able to take this fight to the ground, which we'll talk about in a second, then he can use that ground and pound to transition, or he can use it to find submissions easier. But can he take Volk down is the question. Ilia is not the best wrestler. He has okay takedowns, but Volk is the guy who stopped a lot of Islam's takedowns. Now, Islam admitted himself that the height difference, the low center of gravity Volk had, really threw him off and made it hard for him to get to the leg and complete a takedown. But against Topuria, both of them are the same height. I think Volk's like 5'7" and Ilia is also 5'7", so he's going to have an easier time covering distance and getting under Volk. But Volk also does have very good takedown defense. The takedown defense he showed in the second Islam fight, I know it was short, but he defended one takedown perfectly where he got to the underhooks and escaped. And in the first Islam fight, he defended a lot of Islam's takedowns, and his strength definitely plays into this, and he will definitely be much stronger. Not much stronger, but he'll be stronger than Ilia, whereas against Islam, he was the smaller opponent. However, the other fight we saw him get wrestled a lot in was against Chad Mendes, who is much similar in height to Volkanovski, and in that fight, Chad Mendes took him down pretty easily. He took him down 3 out of 4 times. Now, Chad Mendes is a good wrestler, but not the best grappler, so Volk had a pretty easy time getting up from the bottom against Mendes. But against Ilia, who is an elite grappler, if Volk gets taken down, he's going to have a much harder time getting up from the bottom, because Ilia is going to be able to hold him down easier, and if Volk tries to explode up, he's got to be careful because Ilia could grab a hold of his neck or his arm. But Volk does have very good submission defense. He's been training with Craig Jones, probably the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner in the world. Craig Jones said in the first Islam camp they focused heavily on submission defense. That doesn't mean Ilia can't submit Volk. I could absolutely see that happening, but he's going to have a much harder time. Combine that with the fact that Volk has no neck. It's hard to choke a guy out when you can't even get to his neck. I mean, we saw how good his submission defense was in the Brian Ortega fight, and that was before he was training with Craig Jones. Now, he did get caught in those submissions, which is worrying, but Brian Ortega is a better grappler than Ilia. And this was a couple years ago, so Volk has definitely improved. On the feet, Volk also has the leg kicks, and Ilia shows a massive weakness to the leg kicks because of his stance. He's so heavy on his lead leg. Those leg kicks were a big weapon that Josh Emmett used against Ilia Topuria, and Topuria does not check leg kicks. He approaches fights like a boxer, and we saw this past weekend Sergey Pavlovich, who has a very similar stance to Ilia, get hurt from Tom Aspinall's leg kicks, and Ilia does not have very good kicks of his own, so Volk could implement a similar game plan to the one he used against Max Holloway in their first fight when he just basically kicked Max's leg, and those leg kicks were always there because of the way Max stands, and Max and Ilia have a very similar stance. Volk can also constantly use his jab because although he's a short guy, he has an insane reach for his height. He's had the reach advantage in most of his fights, and this fight is no different, and actually Ilia and Volk are similar in height, whereas a lot of Volk's past opponents like Yair Rodriguez, Max Holloway, and Islam are a lot taller than Volk is. So instead of having to get inside on those fighters and use his switch stance entry, he can sit at range, constantly leg kick Ilia, constantly throw the jab in his face, use the leg kicks and the jab to set up the right hand, and use his footwork to stay off the fence, avoid Ilia's pressure, because Ilia wants to be up close in the pocket, using his boxing, using his combinations, his left hook, right hand, as Ilia is just overall better in boxing range, and he's probably more powerful than Volk is as well. Combine that with the fact that Volk's chin might not be the same after that Islam knockout, which happened only a few months before. But what is my early prediction? Volk has all the skills to beat Ilia. On paper, Volk should win. On the feet, Ilia has a massive weakness to the leg kicks, and Volk has very good leg kicks. He can use the same game plan he used against Max Holloway in their first fight. He has the reach advantage. He can constantly land the jab, constantly look for that right hand as Ilia tries to pressure him forward. The backstep right hand counter is always going to be there, and he should have the takedown defense to shut down Ilia's grappling. And on the ground, Volk is no slouch. He has good grappling of his own, very good grappling defense, so he's going to be hard to submit. But the momentum is on Ilia's side. He's undefeated, just beat up Josh Emmett and Bryce Mitchell, whereas Volk is 1-2 in his past 3 and just got knocked out, and he would only be coming back after a 4-month break. And that knockout was brutal, so we don't know how that will affect his chin. We don't know how it'll affect his mentality, his cardio going into this fight. I would assume Volk's cardio is still amazing, and Ilia also has very good cardio, so that's not an issue here. But if Volk's chin isn't the same, then that's scary going against Ilia, who has so much power, is so good in the pocket. That's where Ilia is going to look to live. Use his footwork, find his way around the jab, get into range, and box Volk up close, because that's where he has the advantage, and that's where he'll catch Volk. He's not going to catch Volk at range. He's going to catch Volk in the pocket. And as Volk tries to exit, he can look for the left hook or the right hand. Also, if he can get this fight to the ground, he has very good submissions, so that's what's worrying me. But as an early prediction, I'm going to have to stick with Volk. I'll go by a decision. If he returns in prime form, I think he should be Ilia. But we just don't know, and that's what's worrying. But anyways, that's the end of the video. We got so many great cards coming up. I have a video coming out tomorrow on Alex Pereira, so subscribe and turn on post notifications so you don't miss that. Like the video if you did enjoy. Leave your early predictions for this fight in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.